A very good evening to all of you present here. Today, we have Ms. Amvalika Senapati with us. For the benefit of the participants, I would like to introduce our esteemed resource person. Ms. Amvalika Senapati is a lawyer by profession. She has been actively associated with Shishu Saroti for the past 12 years, a premier disability NGO based at Guwahati. She has been a member of the drafting committee for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Rules 2019. Also a member of the State Advisory Board on Disability to the Government of Assam and the Guwahati High Court Legal Services Authority. She is an expert on built environment accessibility and has conducted access audits of over 200 government buildings in Guwahati and Aidswal as a part of the Accessible India campaign. Today, we all are here for the 17th lecture of the Disability Studies Certificate course jointly organized by the NCPEDP and the CDRT. The topic for today's lecture is accessibility, concepts, needs, and issues. An important announcement. If anyone has any queries and issues regarding the assignment given, they are requested to stay back after the lecture. Your queries will be addressed. I now hand over the mic to our resource person to start the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak about accessibility in this online certification course. And I'm really very happy that this a course like this is being initiated in a esteemed college, a renowned college of Delhi University. And this is such a need of the hour today that everyone, no matter what your subjects are, that we know a little bit about accessibility, because this is a core functional area of our lives, and each of us need to be aware about what accessibility is and how it touches upon the lives of everyone, including people with disabilities, and not just them, even other major sections of the society, like the elderly, like children. So all of them are impacted by accessibility, the various issues around it. And it's good that we are having this as a part of the curriculum in the certification course. So I'll share my presentation now. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Please let me know if I go fast for the benefit of sign language interpretation. If I'm going fast, please just interrupt me in between and just let me know. Yeah. So to start with, I'm sure this is something which is already covered for you in one of your initial sessions, where when we look at the UN Convention and how it defines persons with disabilities, the emphasis of the definition is not on the word impairment. It is not on the word, that somebody has a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, but rather the emphasis of the definition is on the word barriers. Because when somebody with an impairment will interact with a barrier in their environment, they are stopped from effectively participating in whatever they are doing. And this basically results in their disability. So this is a completely right-based approach definition to disability, persons with disability, and it clearly puts the onus upon the government, upon the state, to remove these barriers. And barriers, there are various kinds of barriers, and we are not here saying that any one of these barriers is less important than one is more significant barrier. All of them have an equal role to play. All of them are equally problematic. All of them are equally hindrance to people with disabilities accessing their rights equally with others. Very simply said, we have to first look at the physical barriers. These are the most common barriers that we see in and around us, in buildings, on the roads, in transportation. Besides this, a very important barrier that we have is in our attitudes, the mindset barriers, where there's so much of stigma involved with disability. There's so much of prejudicial, concepts that we have where we think that people with disabilities are sick, they have some kind of disease, they need to be isolated, they are inferior to us, they need our overprotection. So all of these are also negative mindsets around the concept of disability. There are other institutional barriers, like there could be discriminatory laws, there could be policies which per se do not include the needs of people with disabilities, different procedures and systems that we have. So all of this could be systematically barring not just people with disabilities. This kind of barriers are equally applicable to for other marginalized groups. And lastly, communication barriers, where uh, there could be different barriers for people with sensory impairment. Somebody who cannot see and who cannot hear could face these barriers because there's a lack of braille, because there's a lack of sign language interpreter, or there's lack of closed captioning and signages. This could also result in communication barriers. So now coming to the concept of accessibility, plain and simple means that there's an ease of approach to a particular place, entry to a particular place, or the ability to easily use a particular thing or a device or a product or a particular service. So basically entering into a physical place or using a particular device or a service when it is easily usable or reachable. That is accessibility. So this is a concept which can be used in terms of physical buildings, transportations. It could be used in the example of products. So as we are going across, we'll be coming across different examples of the various things that we have mentioned here. So first and foremost, where is accessibility required? The most common example when we talk about accessibility and we say that, okay, we need accessibility in the building. The most common example that we will give is, yes, the building needs a ramp. And if we see a ramp, we say that, yes, this building is accessible. But actually, it's so much more than a ramp. It's much beyond a ramp. And this is what we will be going into in the next 1 hour. So when we're talking about built environment, you will notice here that the word building is not used. It does not say that we need accessibility in buildings, roads, and transport and information. It says built environment. So why built environment? Because built environment is something much more, it's bigger than building. Building is just a building. But if you're talking about built environment, it also includes everything else that is built. It can be a park, it can be a bus stop, anything else which is not a building, but which is built up. So it includes everything which is built. It includes roads, transportation, all kinds, ships, planes, buses, trains, and all kinds of information, print, electronic, and everything else. And who requires accessibility? Largely, our again understanding is that, okay, somebody who cannot see only, or maybe who cannot walk. But who cannot walk also can be subdivided into two subcategories of ambulant and non-ambulant. Ambulant is somebody who can walk, has some level of mobility, but they'll need some help or they will be a little slow. They will have some difficulty, even if they are not using an assistive device, they may be slow, they may have some difficulty in movement and in maneuvering. And non-ambulant is somebody who's completely immobile, who cannot move at all without the help of a wheelchair. For hearing impairment, which again closely related to speech also, somebody who cannot hear may not be able to speak. So that's one. And somebody who cannot hear also. So both parts of it has to be taken into account. And visual impairment, though I have given you only one icon. Under visual also, we can actually look at two categories. One is complete loss of vision, that's blindness. And the other one is low vision, which is, very low vision where somebody has blurred vision, cannot see properly, even when the person looks at the thing very closely, that would be low vision. So what the various examples that we'll come across now, will be examples of both low vision and blindness, for hearing, for speech, and ambulant and non-ambulant. But before going into the examples, before going into the actual accessibility needs that persons with disabilities have, we just have a brief discussion on why accessibility is so important. If we just look at it just generally, just, cursorily, we will say that yes, a ramp is required, braille is required, sign language is required. But why is it so significant? Let's ask this question to ourselves. If today you or I are not able to go out of our home, do our own things ourselves, be independent, how will our lives be impacted? Our lives will almost come to a standstill, won't it? We'll be completely dependent either on a family or somebody else. We cannot go out for schooling, for colleges. We cannot go out for our jobs. We cannot do everything else. Go for our marketing, go for a movie, go out to catch up with friends over a cup of coffee. Everything stops. So our entire life comes to a standstill, and our entire concept of right to life is denied to us. A quality right to life, because right to life is not only about having a mere existence where somebody is getting food and somebody has clothes on his body and has a shelter over his head. Right to life is about quality life. And therein comes the concept of equality. Are people with disabilities really being, able to access every facility, every service, every right equally along with others? Are they being discriminated? Are they getting equal opportunities along with people without disabilities? This is why accessibility is so important, because without accessibility, definitely they are discriminated. How many people with disabilities do we see in the society? When we go out for a movie, or we go out to a restaurant, or we go out on the weekends for a swim in the swimming pool, we don't see people with disabilities, but that does not mean that they don't want to do these things. They very much want to be part of all of these things, have fun, be a part of the society, meet their friends and family, go out and travel, see other places. But because of inaccessibility, and this actually is systematically discriminating them. Going back to the definition, when we're talking about the barriers which are stopping them from participating equally. So let's go back to the idea that the responsibility is clearly and firmly upon the state to remove those barriers, and only then will this discrimination stop. Only then will people with disabilities get equal opportunities and have the right to equality. And it is not only about that, it is also about the right to inherent dignity of every individual. Very often we'll see, when we're talking about accessibility, when we go to government buildings and we say that, okay, you're building a new building or you're repairing an old building, that now, construct a ramp, incorporate a ramp here. And they're like, the funds are short, we don't have much time, let's complete it. And anyway, how many people with disabilities will come? मतलब साल भर में तो एक ही आएंगे, उसको उठा के लेके जाएंगे. So where is the dignity of that individual with disability who comes there? So it is your right. It is the right of a person with disability that he or she is independent, and he or she is not trussed up like an object or like a suitcase and just lift it up over the staircase. It is their right to have access to a building with a proper ramp and not just be lifted out. So this is just an example of a ramp here, but we can do it with other building features as well. So why is accessibility important? Is because without accessibility, the vicious cycle of poverty and disability will continue forever and ever. What is happening now is somebody is disabled, and because schools and colleges are not accessible, let's not go to college, let's only talk about school. Schools are not accessible. Schools tell them that, okay, we don't have a special educator, go and give admission to your child in some other school. Or finally, the child gets an admission somehow, because Right to Education Act says that you cannot deny admission. So the child gets an admission, but there's no teacher to teach that child in the way the child will understand. And there are so many accessibility issues in the school building. The child is in the school for 6-7 hours. The washroom is far away. There are steps leading to the washroom, because there's a ramp in the school building only at the entrance of the building. But there are not ramps everywhere, connecting the playground, connecting the auditorium or the washroom. So for 6-7 hours, the child cannot stay in school without going to the washroom. And finally, the child drops out of the education system. And when the child grows up without good education, there is very poor job opportunities. And with poor job opportunities, they don't have economic independence. They have poor access to health facilities. They cannot provide for quality health care. They also cannot participate in social and cultural activities. And this results in the systematic social isolation of the person, and the marginalized status continues. The only thing that will break the cycle is accessibility everywhere, so that people with disabilities can access good education, have opportunities for livelihood, and be better integrated socially and culturally. And this will make them independent, empowered, and not dependent on the state or on their family. So this is why accessibility is so important. So now we come to what is the mandate for accessibility as per the law. You may have already quickly gone over the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act in one of your earlier sessions. But very quickly, the RPWD Act touches upon accessibility in these four aspects: infrastructure, transportation, information and communication, and for consumer goods. So basically, it covers buildings as well as products, services, everything. So some guidelines has been notified under the RPWD Act, and these guidelines are for different areas. The first guideline, harmonized guidelines and space standards mentioned here, is for buildings. The second, we have two different guidelines for transportation system. One is for buses and the other is for railways. And lastly, we have two guidelines for information and communication technology. One is guidelines for Indian government websites and the other one is for optical character reader. So these guidelines are to be respectively followed in buildings, in buses, trains, in websites, and so on. Now, coming to public buildings, the RPWD Act defines that any building where public will go is a public building. It really does not matter if the building is a private building or a government-owned building. If the public goes, it's a public building, and that building has to be made accessible. And if they are building a new building, then no permission will be given if the plan does not adhere to the harmonized guideline, the standards which are given in the guidelines. And sometimes what happens is, initially when the plan is being passed in the government offices, the plan is all right. It shows that it is complying with the guidelines. And thereafter, when the building is being constructed, a lot of shortcuts are taken and the building is not made accessible. So finally, at the end of construction, also the completion certificate will be given by the relevant municipal authority or the urban development authority and so on. So even at that point, there's a check and balance here that the completion certificate may not be issued to the building unless it finds that the building which is built up actually complies with the guidelines. And it also says for all buildings which has been in existence prior to the act coming to force, a timeline of 5 years has been given for those buildings to be made accessible. And this will be very soon be over in 2022, because the act came into force in 2017 and 5 years is over this year. For transportation, it says that bus stops, railway stations, airports, everything has to be made accessible. The parking spaces, the washrooms there, the ticketing counters, all of these facilities has to be made accessible. All modes of the transportation also has to be made accessible, not just the railway stations and airports and so on, but the vehicles themselves, the buses, the train coaches, everything has to be made accessible, and roads also has to be made accessible for people with disability. And going ahead with transportation, there are some schemes that the law talks about, which government should come up from time to time. These schemes are not, please notice here that here it talks about schemes. So schemes are kind of at the discretion of the government. Presently, there are not major schemes running around on these areas, but these are probable areas which serve as a guidance for the government, so that government may come up on schemes for these areas, so that incentives and concessions can be given to people for retrofitting of their vehicles and for personal mobility assistance. Information and communication technology takes into its ambit all kinds of audio, print, electronic media, sign language, closed captioning. All of these are included under ICT, and also electronic goods and equipments are to be included. Lastly, consumer goods. promote the development and distribution of all kinds of consumer goods which will comply with, the general minimal accessibility norms so that they can be used by people with disabilities. One example of a consumer good here is say for example, a Samsung Android phone. It has wonderful accessibility features built in it so that people with deaf blindness, people with visual impairment can use the phone as a medium of communication. Now, other than the laws, this is the major flagship program of the government, of the present government that we have, called Accessible India Campaign. And this campaign is trying to push for accessibility in different verticals, built environment, in transportation, both of this. And they have set some targets like saying that in 48 selected cities, so many buildings, 50% of government buildings will become accessible, or this many government buildings will become accessible. They have set some timelines. Accessible India campaign started in 2017, and the various deadlines were set. Some deadlines as early as way back, let me say rather, as July 2018. There were other deadlines also, but these have all failed in the sense that hardly, 30-40% of the work is completed under all of this different Accessible India campaign verticals. Transportation system, it includes all the international airports and domestic airports becoming accessible, major railway stations becoming accessible, and other public transportation carriers as well. And for information and communication, Accessible India campaign envisages that at least 50% of government websites, 50% of public, yes.
I'm sorry. Since you're reading, it's becoming very, very fast. So if you can just be mindful a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I'll slow down.
Because you're reading. You're speaking, it's all right. But when you're reading, it becomes very fast.
Sorry. So do I need to go to the previous slide? Do I go to the previous slide?
No need, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So for information and communication technology ecosystem, the Accessible India campaign has set a target that at least 50% of the government websites, 50% of public documents would be made accessible by March 17 and March 18. This again has failed. These deadlines have not been met. It also has saying that at least 200 sign language interpreters will be trained and developed over a period of 2 years when they started. But again, this has really not caught up on. And also it has said that standards for captioning of television programs would be developed. This has been done for television programs. But 25% of our TV programs are not accessible, as has been set in the deadline. As an example, I can say that this year's Republic Day celebration, the presidential address that was given on Republic Day, that was accessible. Last year, when we had the Special Olympics and even the regular Olympics, that commentary was accessible in the Doordarshan channel because they had sign language interpreters there. But not 25% of television programs have been made accessible till now. So we are trying to reach our targets set under Accessible India campaign, but we are going quite slow as compared to the deadlines which have been set for this. Now, coming to some figures about disability in India and worldwide. If you look at worldwide figure, now this is a WHO and World Bank report figure, which says that 15% of the world's population lives with some kind of disability. And this is significantly about 93 million children and 720 million adults with significant difficulties in functioning. So the huge population of people with disability, if you look at the worldwide figures for disability. Now, for India, if we look at the last available figure that we have, which is Census 2011, it said that 2.21% of the population were people with disabilities, and that was about 26.8 million people with disabilities. The next census should have happened in 2021, but it did not. It's been postponed because of the pandemic and other reasons. But if we even go by the same percentage as in 2011, we will see that in 2021, for a population of 1.4 billion, we now have a present population of about over 31 million people with disabilities. So that again is a significant figure that we just cannot overlook, just cannot undermine as people whose needs, it's all right not to meet the needs. It's definitely not all right. It's definitely important that the right to accessibility has to be ensured for this group of 31 million people and counting. The figures are much more. Another important thing to note here is this, that India is almost 70% rural, 65% rural and 35% urban. So when we're looking at Accessible India campaign, and we're looking at the 48 selected cities, and we're looking at district headquarters of or rather the state capitals of all the states. So these are only the urban population. So Accessible India campaign is not even looking at rural India. And rural India is so much more than what Accessible India campaign is covering. So we cannot really say that Accessible India campaign will, solve all problems. And, once this is achieved, India is going to be accessible. No, even when Accessible India campaign is going to be, implemented well, we still have to be mindful of the fact that India is so much more and that there's 65% more not covered in the Accessible India campaign. So now we come to understanding physical accessibility. I have time till 7:15, so I will try to complete because from now on, my presentation will be mostly about pictures, showing you examples of what are the barriers and what is actually needed for people with disabilities. So I'll try to cover this part of the presentation in about half an hour, and then try to keep about another half an hour for interaction. Is that good? So before going into understanding what is required for people with ambulant, non-ambulant, visual and hearing disabilities, let us first look at the anthropometrics. Anthropometrics is basically the science of the human body proportions. How much space does a person require? So when we say generally our beds are 6 feet long or 6.5 feet long, that is because generally a human being is around that size. So we might have some human being who is, who's on the Guinness Book record of tallest human being in the world, 10 feet long. But our beds are not 10 feet long because the general population is 6 feet generally. So our beds are around 6.5. So that is the concept of anthropometrics. So now if we look at somebody who's a wheelchair user, normally he would require something like 3 feet by 4 feet to, station his wheelchair. So that is the space required. So why is this important to understand is when I am designing a corridor or designing a bathroom, I need to keep in mind that this is the space that would be required for a wheelchair. The turning space that would be required for a wheelchair is around usually 5 feet by 5 feet. So again, at the end of the corridor, do we have 5 feet, 5 feet space for the wheelchair to turn around? If a person is sitting on a wheelchair, maximum they can reach up to 4 feet, and minimum also they can reach up to a certain height and not below that. So again, when we are putting up switchboards, when we're putting up locks on the doors, we have to ensure that it's not very below and it's not too high. Similarly, for sideway reach, again, when somebody is trying to reach up a light switch or something, it cannot be beyond a certain height, because from that side position, a person on a wheelchair cannot reach that. Other than non-ambulant people, now somebody who's ambulant, who can walk, but uses a crutch or has some other difficulty, they will require at least minimum of over 3 feet because they are using a crutch or they are using a rollator. So that space would be required for their maneuverability. Now, other than physical impairments, if we're talking about somebody with visual impairment.
Just one moment, please. Switch interpreters.
Yes.
Okay. We sorted. Are you okay? Thank you.
Yes. Just let me know when I can continue. Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, other than physical disability, if we are looking at somebody with a visual impairment who is using a white cane, now the white cane only alerts the person about any obstruction that is there on the ground. But if there is any obstruction at the body level, at the chest level, suppose there's a almari jutting out from the corridor wall, that person will not be alerted to that. So any obstruction at that body level cannot be beyond a particular width. Otherwise, the person will hit into that object. Now we come to understanding about what are the difficulties that people with physical impairments face. And the difficulties are on the left-hand side for people with ambulant and non-ambulant disability. That is somebody who can move and somebody who uses a wheelchair. These are the difficulties on the left, and on the right is given what are the design elements that they require in the environment. What is required in terms of accessibility, and on the left is what are the barriers. So the barriers are, firstly, if somebody is on a wheelchair, they will have difficulty in managing different levels. So say, for example, steps, staircases. They cannot negotiate difference in levels. Minimum widths, just like I right now said, that a wheelchair requires a minimum space. Somebody who's walking and standing can probably squeeze through, some almaris on the side and the corridor, which is congested with a lot of furniture. But somebody who's in a wheelchair will require at least that much of space to pass through the corridor. So that's a minimum width which is required. Height of certain things also become very crucial. This is because if switchboards, the doors on the locks on the doors, or say, for example, the water tap or the emergency bell, if these are beyond a certain height, it becomes difficult for somebody on a wheelchair to reach up to. Floor finishes, specifically very critical for somebody who's walking, and if it's a slippery floor, it becomes a problem. And sometimes it may not be about the mobility of the person, as in the walking ability. Sometimes some people may have just problem with their hands or may not have a hand for that matter. So they will have difficulty in operating door handles, which are knobs, because knobs are things which requires fine finger control for you to turn the knob and open the door. So these are difficult fixtures to control and operate. So what is required is, instead of difference in levels, there should be sloped surfaces so that the wheelchair can go from one area to the other area. We need clear passages, which has at least a minimum width, decent width. There should be space for turning the wheelchairs. Everything should be within accessible reach, not too high, not too low. Floors should be firm and non-slippery. And fittings and fixtures, whether it is, say, for example, a doorknob, or whether, say, for example, it's the water tap on the basin, or whether it's a shower handle, or anything else, or any other gadget, the buttons on the gadget, everything should be easy to handle for a person who has difficulty with the hand movements. It should not be fine motor control requiring kind of a thing. So now we'll come to different pictures of barriers, and these are almost self-explanatory. So you see somebody in a wheelchair who has to be lifted up because there are stairs. Now this lady on the right is using a crutch, or I think she's using a cane. So this kind of a rotating turnstile, it becomes difficult not only for a wheelchair user, but also somebody who is using a crutch or a rollator. Now in both of these pictures, on the picture on my left, we have a ramp, which is all good. But in spite of there being a ramp, we are saying that this is not accessible. Why? That is because when somebody is going up the ramp, and here again, I'm going back to the principle of independence. We are saying that why is accessibility required? Because of the inherent dignity of the individual and the independence of the person. So going by that principle, we have to understand that whatever accessibility we are giving in the environment should promote the independence of the person. And here, if a person is independently going up on a wheelchair on the ramp, and the person is trying to open the lock, while he's trying to open the lock, because it is a slope, his wheelchair will roll down. So what is not accessible in this picture is there's no landing. After you go up a sloped ramp, there should be a landing, And from the landing, the person should be able to open the door lock. And same picture on the right, as you go up the staircase, there has to be a landing before the doorway is there. Without the landing, it becomes difficult when there's a difference in level to open doors and handle this kind of things. These are heavy doors, which open on their own, they close on their own. Very difficult for somebody on a wheelchair to operate. In Western countries, you will see that before this kind of doors are there, there's usually a small kind of a what you call post on which there's a switch, and once you press the switch, the doors open on their own. But I haven't really seen those kind of doors here in India. Here, the difference in level in the footpath and the road, the small wheels of the wheelchairs get stuck. The picture on your right, you see the wheels get stuck on the grates of the drains which are going down there. So this kind of thing will also obstruct the movement of the wheelchair. This is a Assam Secretariat, one of the buildings. I'm giving a picture here of the Assam Secretariat. And you see there's a shoddily constructed ramp with slippery tiles, no handrail on the ramp. And beyond that also, there's a concept that people has no idea about what this ramp is all for. So, everybody's parking the bike in front of it. So when actually a person with disability will come on a wheelchair, he has no way to reach the ramp also because of all of those two-wheelers parked in front of it. So though sometimes we construct all of these features in our environment because we know that it needs to be there, we really do not understand the true purpose of it and how it will be used. And that is how we create additional blocks. Here the ramp is there, but the ramp is no use because the public does not really understand what the ramp is there for. There's no access to the ramp. The ramp is with slippery tiles and all of those things, which are really not making it accessible. Here is a building you'll see, and there's a small picture given in an inset, which shows the larger picture in a close-up way. And it shows a ramp going from the side. Centrally, you see the staircase in the main picture, but on the side, you see a ramp is going up to the building. So obviously this building is accessible. But still we are saying it is not, because to reach the ramp, you have the first two steps. You see at the beginning of the larger picture, the first two steps. I think my interpreter's screen has frozen. Are you getting it, Preeti?
Yes, ma'am, it's working.
Yeah, it's working?
Preeti is
Okay.
visible, yes.
Okay, fine. So this is an ATM here in Guwahati. Probably the contractor was told that the ATM needs a ramp. He built a ramp, but with no understanding, absolutely no understanding what the ramp was for. So when you see the ramp here on the left, it goes up and it hits the glass door. But actually to enter the ATM, you have to go through the staircase. So people have very shoddy ideas, very sketchy ideas about what these structures are all about, how they are to be used, where they are required. And so this is a classic example of ramp, a proper ramp being built. It's not a very steep ramp also. It has a railing on one side, but it has no purpose, absolutely no purpose, because it goes and hits a wall. Another example, somebody must have said, while the chemistry building in the university was being repaired, somebody must have said the building needs a ramp. And they came up with this, which is actually a big danger to the people. Now, right now, no two people can even walk on the staircase. Earlier, probably the staircase was wide enough for two people to go up and down. But now only one person can either go up or come down. And half of the staircase space is completely wasted with the ramp, which is not completely at all up to specification. Similarly, another ramp here, which is very steep. And here we see the counters. These are the ticket counters. These are the admission counters. One is the interstate bus terminus, and the other one is the secondary education council building. So all of these are the standing height, where somebody who's standing can talk with the receptionist who's on the other side. So these are absolutely not accessible for somebody who comes on a wheelchair. It's not at a lower height. So now we just went through some of the basic barriers that people with physical disabilities faces. And now we will come to what are the kind of accessible features they require actually in the environment. Dropped curbs, so that there's a slope service from the road to the footpath, so that they can just go from the road to the footpath. Curb trams, again, similarly, curb trams from the road to the footpath, so the wheelchair can just get down, get on the zebra crossing and cross the road. Accessible parking with more space, not just like a regular parking with just the size of a small car. It has to be a little wider, because here the person on the wheelchair will get down from the car and alight onto the wheelchair, which will be parked parallel to the car. So the space needs to be broader for an accessible parking. The main entrance of the building ideally should have both the staircase and the ramp, because a person with disability has to be treated with equal dignity. And very often we see that in main buildings, in major offices, in major shopping complexes, the accessible entry is on the side, somewhere at the back. But that's not proper. What is proper is it should be out there in the front. They should be treated as equals, given the equal dignity, and it should be right in the front along with the staircases. So ramps should have proper railings on both sides, and ramps as far as possible should not be curved. So the picture on the right, you see the curved ramp. These are not idle ramps. Ramps can be either dogleg, like the picture on the bottom, where it goes zigzag. It goes up, it has a landing, then it goes up, zigzag, or a straight ramp like the one on the left at the top. When we have a counter, it has to be at two heights, so that somebody who's standing is also able to access the counter, and somebody who's sitting on a wheelchair is also able to access the counter. Here, in both the reception counters, we see that it's one part is at a lower height and one part is at a higher height. But in spite of that, the picture on the left is the correct one, because here we see that there is leg space below the counter. So when the wheelchair user comes near the reception counter, there is space for him to go near, and his legs go, below the counter, and there's space. Otherwise, his legs will go and hit the wall, as on the picture on the right. Here are staircases. The picture on the left is correct. Straight staircases are accessible. Displayed staircases, or the spiral staircases are not accessible for blind people as well. Design ideas also talks about, other than lifts, it also talks about stair lift and platform lifts. Sometimes if it's a big building, if it has a large footfall, lifts are welcome and lifts should be there. But if it's a small building where the footfall is less, where only a few people come, it's a small office, then it's not probably economically viable to install a lift. And in that case, stair lifts can be installed on the handrails of the staircases, and the person on the wheelchair can shift on the stair lift, and it can be, mechanically pulled up, or it can be like a platform stair lift, where the entire wheelchair rolls onto the platform and the platform goes up. So this is a platform lift, which is nowadays used in big shopping centers. I've seen this in Delhi also, in Saket City Mall, where you see the PVR is at a different level, which is just probably 5-6 steps ahead up, and it's very difficult to create a ramp in the middle of the lobby. So there is a kind of a platform lift there. There should be maneuverability space within the toilets, so that somebody who's in a wheelchair has space to align the wheelchair next to the WC and transfer himself or herself onto the WC. So this maneuverability space is required within the toilets, and there should be grab bars, so that while they're transferring, they have all these grab bars for support. The wash station again should have leg space below the basin, just like the reception counter. If there is no space below the basin, it becomes inaccessible for somebody on a wheelchair. If there is no space for making a bathroom with doors which open outside, then we can think of having a bathroom where there are sliding doors. But we also have to consider that there has to be enough space within the toilet for maneuverability space. And because doorknobs are inaccessible, they need handles and big bars, because these are easier for somebody without fine finger control to operate. Similarly, for water taps and faucets, lever type taps are welcome, and rounded faucets are not accessible for people with difficulty in their hand movement. Similarly, we need lawn skid flooring material floors should be what you call non-slippery. And for emergency evacuation, there's something called an evac chair, which should be there in multi-story buildings, because during emergency, like we all know, we know that it's always written in the lift, no? In case of fire, do not use the lift, use the staircase. So when somebody is in a wheelchair and you cannot, physically lift the person up and bring him down, you can use an evac chair during emergencies. The only thing is that evac chairs can only be used to bring a person from upper floor to lower floor. You cannot use this chair to go from lower floor to upper floor. Now we come for somebody with visual impairment. They have difficulty in orienting and understanding what is there in the environment. They will have difficulty in understanding if there's an obstacle right in front of them, and in also getting visual information which are there in the form of printed signages and so on. So instead of signages, they will need audio messages. They will need different kinds of warnings to make them aware about whatever hazards are there in front of them, and tactile guidance tiles are very important in orienting and finding their way. So some examples are, we see the staircases with very less color contrast between the difference in level in the different steps. In one staircase, it's dark colored tiles, and in the other staircase, it's some carpeted tiles, which is a very dangerous kind of a design for us to understand where is the level difference actually happening. So these are very difficult for somebody with low vision to understand. Not just low vision, even for us, it is very difficult. Now, somebody who's using a white cane will not know if there's a barrier at the body level. So these are barriers, examples of barriers at the chest level, at the face level. So they will not be warned about these barriers when they're only using a white cane. So this should be removed or completely carved off. Here we don't see any barrier. It's a completely empty big room. So, but then again, we are saying that this is an obstacle. This is a barrier. Why? This is because when somebody with visual impairment is going into this kind of a space, which is huge, big, and there's no indication where he needs to go, the person will become disoriented and confused. He'll become a little apprehensive. How much more do I have to go? Do I go left? Do I go right? If I go straight, what do I get? There's no indication where he's going. So he has no idea where he needs to go to. So this is a kind of a place which is completely going to fog the person, completely going to confuse the person where he is going, and he will lose his orientation about the space. Similarly, here we see for a low vision person, this reflecting tiles, these tiles which are so polished and it's reflecting, it's very difficult for somebody with low vision to understand where is the flow, where is the furniture and everything. In silent airports which are silent, those are very, again, difficult for people with visual impairment because they rely on the audio messages. So it becomes very difficult for somebody who's blind and who's traveling alone to be aware of, from where the flight is going, from which gate and so on. So what is required for visual impairment is, firstly, we need clear color contrast and anti-skid tiles at the edge of the staircases. Even within the toilets, if everything is white, the floor is white, the commode, the basin, everything is white, and the wall tiles are also white, then they will have difficulty in understanding the depth of where the things are. So for low vision people, clear color contrast in switchboards, within the washrooms, this is very critical. So this is again an example of color contrast. And they need information in Braille, whether it is in the signages, or here we see example of a kind of a, what do you call, a Coke. It's a kind of a Coke bottle, Coke can, and you see the information is written on Braille. We don't have this kind of goods here, but these are consumer products which are being made accessible for people with blindness. I showed you that big open white space, which is a little disorienting for people with disability because they don't know where to go. So what they actually require in this kind of a space is, at the beginning of the space, or at the beginning or the entrance of the building, they need a map of, what is the layout. So if they're entering a huge museum, they need a layout at the entrance to show, okay, here's the art section, here's the history section, here's this section. If I turn left and right, there's the toilet. If I go straight, there's the cafeteria. So the entire layout of that public building should be at the entrance of the building. And this ideally should be there in all of our major public places. Whether it's a railway station, a bus stop, a deputy commissioner's office, it should be there everywhere. And this picture on the left, you see a control panel within a lift, which is touch panel. Now, touch panels are not accessible for blind people. What they need is tactile control panels, which also has braille information. And for low vision people, there's also color contrast in the light of the switch, as you can see in the right picture, the right side picture on the lower side. So all the pictures on the right are accessible. The touch panel on the left is not accessible. And they also need these tactile tiles to guide them across when they are going on the corridor, which way they need to go. If there's a turning, then the tiles will change. These dotted tiles will basically indicate that there's a change in direction or that there's a change in level. And if the tiles are straight with the straight lines, it means that they can keep going straight ahead. So these are the dotted tiles giving an indication that there's a change in level just here, and then the staircase starts. Similarly, here at the railway station on the left, you can see the dotted tiles, the line, the row of yellow dotted tiles. It's an indication that we are coming to the edge of the platform and the platform ends here. So this is a warning not to go ahead. So this kind of tiles are there for people with visual impairment. Here, the picture on the left, you see the difference between the road and the footpath. The dotted red tiles are there for somebody with visual impairment, with blindness. But the picture on the right is for somebody with low vision. Again, it will demarcate the change between road and footpath, but the bright yellow color is there for somebody with low vision to give him a warning between the road and the pedestrian walking area. For low vision, again, if there are no markings on the door and if it's a clear glass, they will very likely go and bang themselves on the door. So some kind of clear manifestation, the proper manifestations of the door at the chest level, at the body level is required so that somebody with low vision is alerted to the fact that this is a glass door and that there's something in front of them. And they need audio announcements in lifts and public places. Now, for somebody with hearing impairment, we very often really do not think that there are a lot of accessibility issues for somebody with hearing impairment. So, but then they do have difficulty in identifying the hazards which could be there in the environment and in gaining audio information. So for this, they need closed captioning, they need sign language, and they need visual information. Just the opposite of blind people. Blind people will need audio and they will need visual information. So these are just some of the examples of what is actually required for them. So visual signages are required. And this picture on the left that you see is of a red light. That's called a strobe light. So whenever there's an emergency in a building, say for example, there's a fire and the siren goes, and the alarm rings, everybody leaves the building because they know that they are supposed to evacuate the building. But that siren is something a person with hearing impairment cannot hear. So you need the strobe light where the light will flash, blink on and off. So that's an indication that they need to evacuate the building. So this is a kind of a visual alert for somebody with hearing impairment who will not be alerted with the audio siren. They'll need information boards and they will need loop induction systems. Loop induction systems would be used in areas where there's a busy counter, a reception counter, or say, for example, a ticket counter in the railway station or the bus stop, where there are a lot of people, a lot of background sound. What happens in that kind of a scenario is when somebody is using a hearing aid, and the hearing aid picks up all of the background noises. And because of all the background noises, a person using a hearing aid often does not wear the hearing aid and they keep it open. But if they see the loop induction system on the signboard at the counter, they can put on the hearing aid, tell the receptionist that you please switch on the loop induction system, and the magnetic field that will be created will drown out the background noise, and the person with hearing impairment can clearly hear what the receptionist is saying. So basically, the loop induction system will help to drown out the background noises and help the person hear clearly to whoever is speaking next to him. and sign language interpretation, of course. So this is what is required for people with visual hearing impairment. And these, just to give an overview, are the basic features in buildings which are required, both the indoor features and the outdoor features. For outdoor, we are talking about the parking, the entrance, and for the indoor, the reception, the corridors, the lift area, staircases, washrooms, the signages, all of these things has to become accessible. So this is all about harmonized guidelines and what is required in the built environment accessibility. I don't have much time. It's almost 6:45, but if you want me to go on, I can quickly go through the bus body code and the transportation, the railway guide, but those are just a couple of slides. I can just quickly go through if you want me to, or I can start taking questions now itself. If somebody would just give me a clue, do I go on or do I stop here?
Ma'am, you may continue for another 10 minutes maybe.
Okay,
We
sure.
have time
Then
till
I'll-
7:15.
Okay, done. So I just have a couple of slides each for the standards to be followed in buses and railways and ICT. So I'll just quickly go through those. So for buses, we have the bus body code, and it talks about this. This is just a bird's eye view of the main provisions for accessibility in buses. But if you look at the entire bus body code, it has, it has the provisions in much greater detail. So low floor buses should be there with fold out ramps. So whenever the bus stops, the ramp should fold out onto the street and the wheelchair can roll onto the bus. Automatically operated doors should be there. The door should be wide enough so that wheelchairs can come in and out. There should be handrails and handrolls wherever the people with disabilities are sitting. There should be priority sitting area in the front part of the bus. There should be a public address information system so that somebody who is visually impaired and hearing impaired, they can either hear or see the signages or, what is the next stop that is coming, and if there's an emergency, how do they alert the people on the bus? So this entire thing should be there on the public information system. Safety signs should be there for people with disability. And the priority seating area, which is there in the front side of the bus, it should also have a space so that the wheelchair can be locked on next to the seat, so that if the person is using a crutch or a rollator, it can be fixed. They can be placed to secure those as the person is traveling. And there should be also things to control the adjustment for requesting stops. So this control should be next to those seats, so that if they need to stop the bus at a particular control, they can do the control management from the seat itself. So these are some of the main requirements for buses. For railways, there are two things. One is the rail coaches themselves, and one is the railway station. So in the station, if you're looking at accessibility in the station, there should be standard trams, which can standard trams and counters. Counters should be at a particular height so that wheelchair user can also access those. Parking lots should be reserved. At least 2 or 3 parking lots should be reserved for people with disabilities, as far as possible, near to the entrance of the station. The walkway should be non-slippery, of course. Signages should be there, which are appropriately visible. Public information system, again, should be both visual and audio for the benefit of visual and hearing impaired people. And cafeterias and eateries should also be accessible, whatever is there in the railway station for people with disabilities. Drinking water facilities should be accessible. There should be accessible toilet. And most importantly, a very important requirement is inter-platform transfer. Going from platform 1 to 2 to 3, how does the person go? Is there a lift taking you from one platform to the other? So that provision has to be there. There should be also an assistant booth wherever possible, and engraving should be there at the edges of the platform. So this is the one picture I showed you earlier of the yellow dotted tiles, which are the engraving on the platform edge. So these are the minimum requirements for an accessible railway station. Within the rail coaches, firstly, how does the person on a wheelchair go from the platform to the coach? So the difference in level should not be there. Ideally, it should be at one level. And the coach exterior should also clearly say that, this is an accessible coach. In the interior, there should be space enough so that the wheelchairs can maneuver between the seats. And the seating amenities, it should be at least, big enough for the maneuverability of the wheelchair. toilets should be accessible, and there should be provision for emergency evacuation, and separate coaches for persons with disabilities is desirable. Though this is stated in the guideline, I don't know how far it is practical, because a person with disability very often may travel with a family member without disability. So are you going to put them separately in different coaches? So this is not very clear in the guidelines. Next, we come to accessibility in ICT, information and communication technology. The most important guideline here is the guidelines for Indian government websites. And this talks about how there should be an option to resize the text. So whenever somebody is reading a website page or web page, there should be an option to make the figures, the font size bigger, the letters bigger. So if somebody has a low vision disability, they are able to make it bigger and read it properly. And scanned images of text should not be there, because this makes it an image. The moment the text is scanned and put up as a picture, it does not become readable. Otherwise, if you type and put it as a PDF or as a Word file, then it can be readable. But as an image, it does not become readable. So text should not be there as an image. Visual contrast should be there for blind, for low vision people. So if a good contrast is, say, for example, a dark black background with clear bright letters on top of it. But if our background is pale gray and the writing is kind of black, it's a little, fuzzy. It's not very clear. So that should not be there. Captioning should be there. Transcripts for pre-recorded and live videos and live content, that option should be available. And whatever is non-text content, so whenever there are pictures in the web page or there are videos, there should be a text alternative saying that this video is about this, or this picture is about this. And the complete web page should be ideally navigable through a keyboard, because very often somebody who has issues with the hand, they may not be able to navigate with the fine control of a mouse. Though, we do get accessible alternative mouse nowadays, it's easier for somebody with a hand mobility issue to navigate it with a keyboard. So the entire web page should ideally be navigable with a keyboard. So just to sum up what the presentation was all about, firstly, barriers. Barriers are of different kinds. Barriers could be in our mindsets, it could be in the physical environment, it could be in transportation or on the roads. And accessibility is the idea about the ease of independence of approach and entry to a particular building, place, or the use of a particular product or a service. And who requires this accessibility is people with locomotor disability, physical impairment, it could be ambulant and non-ambulant, people with visual impairments and hearing disabilities. So for visual, both blindness and low vision are taken into account. And though we are saying hearing disabilities, it will also actually include speech impairment. And there are various laws and programs to support the mandate for accessibility. Rights of Persons with Disability Act clearly notifies various guidelines for physical accessibility in buildings, that is the harmonized guidelines that we have for space standards and barrier-free built environment. There's a transportation guideline, bus body code, and another one for railways. There's the ICT guideline for government websites. There are other guidelines for television captioning, and more guidelines are now coming up. They're being drafted presently. For physical accessibility, whatever is required in the buildings for people with ambulant and non-ambulant disabilities, our basic understanding always was that ramp is the big feature which is required. But other than ramp, we have to be mindful of what is the maneuverability space. Is there enough space around for moving a wheelchair around? What is the height of particular fixtures and fittings, so that somebody on a wheelchair or somebody with small stature, somebody with dwarfism can reach the lock on the door. So all of this also has to be taken into care of. Floors has to be non-slippery. There has to be handrails proper on staircases and in trams. Lifts has to be of a particular size. Similarly with toilets, they have to be of a particular size so wheelchairs can go in and come out. So all of these are different features in buildings. Coming to transportation and ICT, mainly low floor buses, people generally understand that the moment it's a low floor bus, it's an accessible bus. No, Low floor is just one main requirement of a accessible bus, but there are other requirements in the bus to make it accessible. There has to be dedicated seating for people with disability. There has to be a space for keeping their wheelchair, the crutch, the rollator. There has to be a public information system, where to board, where's the destination, where to get down, how to alert the conductor or the bus driver when the stop has arrived. So all of these features has to be there. In railway stations, the ticketing counters, the cafeterias, the toilets, the inter-platform transfer, all of these things are important, as well as accessibility within the coach, and also ICT, as we have just discussed now. So this is, just to sum it up, the main guidelines about accessibility. Thank you. If there are any questions, I would like to take them now. I'll stop my presentation. Are there any questions?
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Lokita Vishal, ma'am. Ma'am, I want to know what are the guidelines for any institution's classroom and their infrastructure. In this regard, I want to get some government guidelines. How can I access, ma'am?
For classrooms, you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Classroom, laboratory, library.
Okay, so you won't have specific guidelines for classrooms, laboratory, restaurant, pub, cinema hall, okay? All of these things will come under built environment. So we have one major guideline for that, which is called the harmonized guideline and space standards for barrier-free built environment. So today what I've shared with you is just a basic, key points of the harmonized guideline. And this can be applicable anywhere, whether it's a pub or a restaurant or a classroom or a, what you call office building. So basically what we're looking at here is just a core ingredients. What is accessible for somebody with locomotor disability? What is accessible for somebody with visual and with hearing impairment? And this same fundamental things you can apply whether it's a classroom or a laboratory or a restaurant or an office or a hotel. It'll apply everywhere. But if you really want to go through the harmonized guideline, it's available on the net. You can look it up, and there are specific provisions towards the later part of the guideline, specifically talking about, say, for example, a hospital building or something like that. But I definitely don't remember it mentioning a classroom and a laboratory. But there are certain provisions for hospitals and hotels mentioned there in the harmonized guideline.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have more questions?
Ma'am, good evening. Am I
Good
audible?
evening. Yes, you are.
Ma'am, I am Abhay Pratap Singh, and I am a research scholar from Banaras Hindu University. Ma'am, and I am visually impaired also. Ma'am, what I noticed that the attitudinal barrier is most prevalent in the society. So before, means in any building or in any offices, we have seen that means those administrative members were not giving more attention to our needs. Uh, and if we talk about these laws or these guidelines, they are not paying any attention. Suppose that if I will go to my office or anywhere where I am living in the hostel, if I will go and see, tell them that these are the guidelines and you have to follow such norms, they will not give means any attention. So we have to go to means the nodal officers or the different table cells. These are the options. But being means as a student, I am a student. I have all the other works to do, or I want to know that what are the more initiative that government must take to India. I mean, so Accessible India campaign is one of them that makes our country accessible. So, what are the more initiative we can take or government can take in this means in accessibility regarding
Yeah.
problems?
Yes. The core requirement here is awareness.
Yeah.
Like I said at the very beginning, 90% of the people you will ask what is accessibility, they will say ramp is accessibility. That is the level of our common man's understanding. And nobody is to be faulted here because we don't know. We have never come across it. We have not discussed. So we don't know about it. But it's high time we know because we are also building our own houses. We are building our own shops when we are business people. And as officers and as what you call community people, we need to be aware and mindful of the rights of this group of people who were continually denying them their rights. So if you look at the RPWD Act, Section 39 of the Act clearly talks about the responsibility of the government to create awareness amongst different categories of stakeholders, whether it's bureaucrats, administrators, legislators, parliamentarians, whether it's college and educational institution officials, whether it's the community, parents, people with disabilities themselves. So to create awareness amongst different stakeholders to understand the rights of people with disabilities and also to create awareness so that the government officials are aware of their responsibilities. Because when we're talking about rights of people with disabilities, that's just one side of the coin. If there are rights, somebody has a duty. And here the state has the duty to ensure that accessibility is brought into place. But what you're saying is the reality today. Yes, the officers are not mindful of what we want, even if you point it out, and we don't have the time to point it out in each and every building. We have our own work. So of course, that's a practical reality. But if you look at how India was 15 years, 20 years down the line, you will see that change has happened and change has happened for the good. There is some positive change, but yes, we have probably only achieved 10% and we are still 90% to go. We are on the road to changing mindsets, but it's a slow process. It will take time. It will probably take decades.
Ma'am, I want to
It
say
will
that,
take time.
yeah, ma'am, being a research scholar, you have heard about NAC, who is giving ratings to
Yes.
universities and
Yeah,
colleges.
right.
Why
Yeah.
don't we add some criteria regarding accessibility?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think that's a very wonderful idea. And this, I think, should
and
be pushed for with NAC. This can be pushed
yeah,
for.
that
Sorry to
Yes.
jump.
Right?
Sorry to jump
You
in,
have a
but
rating by NAB, you said? Who is this?
NAC,
NAC,
NAC.
NAC,
NAAC, yeah,
NAAC.
yeah.
Yes.
Please can you do that? What is the abbreviation for?
Uh, Sir, NAC is giving ratings to universities that every year you
Depending
are,
on the standards that
yeah, that this university is
So
on the
can you
top of
expand
the
this NAAC, please?
it is National Assessment and
accreditation.
Accreditation Council.
Yeah.
National Assessment and Accreditation Council.
Abhay, I think that's a very good idea that you've given. And
That's a wonderful idea. That's a wonderful idea.
And
can
then
definitely be
one more
thought.
thing that you are talking about movies, OTT platforms. Ma'am, we have seen that various states have given means they tax-free movies or censor board have given some extra means facilities to some movies. So why don't we take that initiative that if you are giving audio description or accessibility, make your content accessible, we will give you some means tax relaxations. It may be also a good step
Yeah,
to make.
that's also a wonderful idea. I think just the government needs to be pushed here, but
Yeah,
very much doable, and I think it should be done because it's a basically the carrot and the stick. So if you basically are doing your work, why not get an incentive when others are not doing the work? You're doing something, you should
yeah,
get an incentive. But then having said that, we also have to look at it from the other end of the spectrum where if you say this to the government will probably tell you that no, the law is there. The law is saying everybody should make it accessible. So why should I reward somebody? It's their duty.
yeah, yeah.
That
It's a duty, but
yeah, I understand. So that could also be another kind of debate here. So
yeah. Thank you, thank you for
yeah,
your insightful lecture. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do we have more questions?
Hello, ma'am. I'm Elsie
Yes.
from Mumbai.
Hello.
One doubt
Yeah.
related with Abhay only.
Yeah.
Any websites are accessible in regional language, government, especially websites?
I am not sure about regional languages. It could be. It could be in some states. But I'm really not aware about this. Generally speaking, I do understand that states like Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and Kerala are doing quite a lot about disability inclusion. So perhaps some of their websites could be accessible, but I really don't know about this. What are the actual websites in vernacular which are accessible?
Thank you, ma'am.
Are you aware of any websites, Akshay?
No, in Mumbai, I think majority websites are available only in English, not in as a Maharashtra in Marathi or Hindi. Is very rare case. So
Yeah.
again, the regional, again the language barrier is the biggest problem for the, I think, this domain.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Ma'am, I missed your question.
Yes, please.
You were asking me something, ma'am?
So I was just asking you, are you aware of any regional websites, government websites which are accessible? What Elsie is asking basically.
No, so we have been doing accessibility checks of all the websites, governmental websites, but not all of them are, completely accessible. There are like.
But those are mostly English, right? English
yes, those are
websites,
mostly
yeah.
English. The ones in regional languages are not completely accessible at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And in fact, that is a problem to a large extent because now if you're trying to also, say, for example, apply for your UDITI, now UDITI is a unique disability ID card. So that the entire application process is online. But if a person with disability from Assam, say, for example, goes to the UDITI website and entire information is there in English. So the person only knows vernacular. So the person has a lot of difficulty in applying for the UDITI card. So this is a problem because all of these things should be available in different regional languages. This is a major problem. There's a comment here on the, what you call, comment section from Arun. Accessibility in the physical environment are actually universal design. More European countries have a higher older population, and for those person to access public transportation is critical. So the designs are benefiting all people, absolutely. So we won't say that accessibility is same as universal design. Universal design is actually a concept bigger than accessibility. So accessibility, when we're talking about accessibility, it actually only takes into account the needs of people with people with disabilities. But if you're talking about universal design, it will take into account different sections of the population. It could be people with disabilities. It could be people who are temporarily sick or temporarily impaired because of a fracture, or something like that. It could include old people, it could include children, pregnant ladies. So different groups of the population would be included when we're talking about universal design. So that's actually a larger concept in accessibility. I think you also have another sessions coming up on universal design and reasonable accommodation, if I'm not mistaken. And this is still a very developing concept, the concept of universal design. It's probably about just a 2-3 decade old concept and very new in India, 2-3 decades in the world and very new in India. If there are any more questions.
Ma'am, I have once more. Ma'am, ma'am, I
Yes,
want to say
please
that
go ahead.
ma'am, in public buildings where I have seen accessibility issues have been solved, but on the but they have just given ramps and tiles, but they are only for the wheelchair users. But if we talk about visually impaired or deaf and dumb, they have not given that kind of attention for those impairments. So these are also a big
Yes,
issue.
so it's a big issue, and this is an issue not because the people who built the building have something against people with visual and hearing
Yeah,
impairment. They don't want to do for them. It's basically about lack of awareness. People don't know that this is required. They don't know that this is could be a need, that this could be a challenge for somebody with visual and hearing impairment. So it's very important that now for the next 1 decade at least, we create a lot of awareness. So I was really happy to know when Akshay shared yesterday that this online certification course has started, and a lot of people across India from different, not just students, even some teachers, some working professionals have joined in this course. It's wonderful. It's not necessarily that uh, accessibility is something which only engineers and architects needs to know about. No, we all of us should know about this, because that's how we'll create awareness. If I see a new building coming up today in my neighborhood, which I know is going to be a shopping mall tomorrow, and I see that building construction ऐसा है कि accessibility का कोई features ही नहीं है, I need to point it out to the building authorities, to the contractor, the builder, whoever, saying that please make it accessible. Maybe they don't know about the law. So the more we create awareness, it will have a cascading effect, won't it? I mean, each one of us will go and inform another 3-4 people at least. So I think awareness is the key to it, and only with awareness and with time, it won't happen in 1 year, 2 year. It will probably take at least 2 decades for us to make some visible change. But this is a start. This is a good start.
yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Government, here's another comment here. Government is always talking about budget issues when it comes to disabled access. If they are made to see the cross-population benefits, then the case may be made more strongly. Yes, earlier, very often, this was the excuse that the government gave, because if we look at the earlier disability law of 1995, we also talked about accessibility in buildings, roads, and transport. It did not mention information accessibility, but even the other three accessibility, the provision of the law was this, that the government may, depending upon its economic capacity, provide for accessibility in blah, 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 buildings, road, transport. So the moment the discretion is given to the government to say that you decide, if you have the economic power, then you provide accessibility, government 9 out of 10 always chose not to provide it, saying that, budget tight hai. That was always the classic answer. But now the RPWD makes a marked change, and it's a very welcome change. It's a paradigm shift entirely, because it is talking about accessibility as a right. Government का कुछ नहीं ये होता है कि government does not have an option to say कि दे पाएंगे नहीं दे पाएंगे. Nobody is asking the government, can you give? Do you have the budget? It is a full stop. You have to give, full stop. Any new building you make today has to be made accessible if it's a public building, full stop. Nobody is saying here that you may make it accessible if you have the money, you may not make it accessible. So now government can no longer give an excuse saying that budget is not there. It has to be provided. It is a matter of right. And if we are denying accessibility, we are denying the person's basic human right, because without accessibility, the person cannot access education, the person cannot access livelihood, and the person cannot access most other things in life. So it's a basic human right. Accessibility is a basic human right, cannot be denied.
We can take 1 or 2 more questions if there are.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to go up? I think we don't have more questions, so I'll do the concluding remarks. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of this course on such a short notice. And I'm very grateful that you took out your time and gave the lecture today to all the students. And I'm sure it was helpful for all of us. So thanks again. And thank you so much. I hope everyone liked the lecture and have learned something new about accessibility. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All those who have issues regarding the assignments can stay back.
I'll be leaving now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Preeti ji, Arun ji will just take 10-15 more minutes of your time. I hope that is okay with you. Thank you, ma'am. So, hi everyone, Akshay this side, and Siji has shared a few of your concerns with me. So I'll just, is Nilaksh here? Is Nilaksh present in the lecture? I don't think so is there. So the most common issue that all of you I think are facing is regarding the time limit and the deadline. So the initial deadline was 22nd of April, which we have already shifted to 24th of April. So it is already around 25 or 26 days of time that you guys have been given for the submission of your assignment. But still I've discussed it with Someshwar sir and we are okay with shifting it to 27th of April. So your new deadline would be 27th April, Wednesday, 11:59 p.m. So your assignments should be submitted by that time. If there is a delay in that, then marks will be deducted and your assignments may not be accepted. Someone has asked if the word limit Yashashvi has asked if the word limit can be reduced to 1500. So I'm sorry, but we cannot reduce the word limit. 3000 words is not a lot of words, and all of us for our assignments and for our projects are used to of writing assignments of such word limit. So word limit will remain the same, 3000 words minimum. Himani Wadhwa has requested if she can modify the title of her paper, which is Himani here? I don't think she's present. Himani, we can't hear you.
Hi, sir. I had the same doubt if we can change the topic because if we are not having enough material for the topic that we thought we will do it on, then can we change it a bit or modify? Is that okay?
May I know your name?
Pooja this side.
Pooja Yadav?
Yeah.
All right. Yes. So if you think that you want to change your topic and if you think that you can finish your assignments with the new topic within the deadline, then we don't have an issue. I will reopen the form and you can edit your topics there, or you can re-enter the details of your assignment again. So if you're not willing, not comfortable with your current topics, then you can change it. We are flexible with that, not an issue. Is that okay, Pooja and Himani? Himani,
Right.
is that okay with you too?
Thank you.
Yeah. CG, the word limit has to be 3000 minimum. It has to be strictly followed, and maximum also needs to be strictly followed. So if it is 3000 minimum and 4000 maximum, then that has to be followed, right? Nilaksh, you were asking if you want to write an essay or something else, and what is the I don't think he's there, but I'll answer the query. So
yes,
if
I'm here actually.
Okay, you are here. So your query, what's your query? Can you tell me, please?
Actually, you have said that we have to write that essay or whatever that we want to write, and that it should include the objective, abstract, and bibliography, reference, and all that. So the 3000 words are actually that that partner, that main chapter.
Yes.
Okay, and it should be present in that the chapter section.
See, if you are writing a research paper, okay, if you're writing an article or a paper, then you have to add everything, that is research objectives or whatever is given in the email, okay, and your abstract could be 200 words. I don't know what exactly is mentioned in the email, but I'll just tell you all. So for example, if your abstract is 200 words, then you have to follow that. But your main chapters, the main chapters of the, or the main content of the article or research paper, whatever you're writing, should be of 3000 words. Okay. And whatever else is remaining, research objectives, methodologies, any other component that has been added, abstract, cover page, all that can total be of 1000 words max. Okay. I mean, उससे कम भी हो सकता है, कोई problem नहीं है. But there is no limit कि आपको आपका research objectives, methodologies, abstract, cover page, इन सबको कितने words में रखना है. आप उसको कम भी रख सकते हो, बस वो component होना चाहिए, क्योंकि वो component marking के लिए और आपका paper समझने के लिए important होगा. लेकिन जो आपके main chapters हैं, वो 3000 words minimum होना चाहिए.
Okay, and there is another thing that you had asked for a certificate. What should we have put there?
So certificate of plagiarism, right? Certificate of plagiarism की बात कर रहे हैं ना?
So we have to do that plagiarism test.
No, you don't have to do the plagiarism test. What you do is plagiarism test will be done by the evaluators or from us. What you have to do is you have to just write 2, 3, 4 lines लिखना होता है. आप किसी भी project को college में करते हैं तब हम लिखते हैं that this is to certify that this project titled.
Okay, undertaking kind of.
Yes, kind of undertaking. Okay, so you are undertaking that you have not committed plagiarism and your project is completely unique. And whatever percentage of plagiarism we have given, we have said that we will exempt, we will be exempting that. That is not a problem. But it shouldn't be more than that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. CG, you had one query. CG, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So your query was basically extending
Am I
the deadline,
audible?
right?
Yes.
Your voice is feeble, can't hear you properly.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that is clear.
Yeah.
Okay. There is someone in the chat box. Ashwin. Ashwin, why haven't you selected the topic already? If I may know.
I didn't know, because I just saw that mail, but I didn't know whether I had to reply or what had to be done.
No, but we had informed you all that you have to choose a topic by 31st of March. And that message was circulated on WhatsApp and email both.
Yes, I think I may have missed it or.
See guys, I'll do one thing. Or I have been monitoring all the classes. Not everyone is attending the lectures. And people have been missing periodic tests too, and then people are coming to me after the test is over that we have not been able to attend test for X, whatever the reasons are. I am not saying that the reasons are not genuine, but if there is something genuine or something important because of which you have missed your classes or test, then I suggest that you guys inform me prior, so that we can at least arrange a reschedule a test for you all. Because अगर आप लोग बाद में टेस्ट मिस करने के बाद में मुझे बोलेंगे तो we cannot reschedule. So whoever has missed the test now, and I don't think we can reschedule it. And for those who have not chosen the topics for their assignments, I will do one thing. I will reopen the link today and I will keep it open for next 24 hours. So by tomorrow is 14th April. So 14th April, you have to choose your topics, and whoever has not chosen the topics may fill in the details. And yes, Ashwin, if you're comfortable with doing a judgment analysis, you can go with it. But you have to inform me in prior what kind of a format are you going to use. Are you going to do an IRAC method or are you going to do something else? That's clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the new deadline, that is 27th April, is okay with everyone? If anyone has issues, then you can speak about the deadline first.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Shubham this side.
Yes, Shubham.
Sir, my semester exams are scheduled from.
Your voice is breaking, Shubham. Shubham, can't hear you properly.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Sir, I was saying that my semester exams are scheduled from 19th onwards, and I have also set the date sheet to CG ma'am. And sir, they will be till 29th of this month only. And those are semester exams, term examinations, not unit test and something. So it's very difficult for me to you can say to do the things. And I'm in MSM1, so very much unexperienced regarding the report writing and all. So I need some extra time, sir.
Okay, okay, Shubham, got your concern. Is there anyone who is having exams on the similar dates? Anyone from those who is present?
Excuse me, brother. Yes, sir. Hello.
Yes, who is this?
Yes, this is Lavansh. Actually, I have 2-3 exams in between. Actually, I am doing LLM from National University Delhi. So we have an exam on 25, 26, 27, 28, and thereafter I have Haryana Judiciary mains exams as well in between. So it will be very difficult for me to give this assignment on
Okay,
time.
so one
Yes.
question from Shubham and Lavansh, both of you. Have you guys already started working on the assignment?
Not yet, to be honest.
Not yet, sir.
Not
Still
yet.
preparing for the
So
semester
see,
exams.
the reason why we have asked you all to submit your topics and start working on the assignments a month prior was this only, so that if you guys have your exams, at least you can start working on it. So Shubham, your exams are from 19th and Lavansh, your exams are from 25th, and I understand that the seriousness of exams that you guys are preparing for. I definitely understand it, and I will have to see what can be done. But I think if you guys could have started working on the assignments, since
Actually, there are
it's already
practicals
it's
also are going on
already
in
it's
my
already
stream.
15,
So yeah,
it's already 15 days. So I do believe that you guys could have started at least working on it. But your concerns and anyone else who is having their exams on, in the last weeks of April, please write an email to us and then we'll see what we can do for that. Because if that's the case, you should have informed us in prior, because the final exam that we are scheduling is also in the last week of April. So how are you guys going to manage that? So please
Sir,
write an email जिसका भी एग्जाम है, आप लोग अपनी emails और किस डेट email लिख दीजिए, किस डेट पे आपके एग्जाम्स हैं वो डेट दे दीजिए. And it would be really great if you guys could share your time sheets, date sheets of your exams too, so that we can accordingly reschedule the exams. Assignment date remains the same, 27th of April, but write an email and then I'll have to consult with Someshwar sir and see what can be done in your cases, Shubham and Lavansh.
yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
More
Okay, sir.
questions,
Thank you,
more
sir.
concerns? Is there any more anything that you want to ask regarding the assignments?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please. Who is this?
Sir, my name is Sandeep Kumar Pal.
Okay.
I prior contact to you, sir. My
Yes.
query is format of assignment which I will submit. I want to submit my assignment in audio format.
See, Sandeep ji, I'll be honest with you. I don't have a problem accepting your assignment in an audio format, right? But the problem would come when the evaluator has to evaluate that. So I remember I had spoken to you earlier, right?
Yes.
Yes. So is there a possibility where you can arrange for a scribe?
Don't worry, sir. Don't worry.
No, I'm just asking. I mean, I'm not worrying about anything. I'm asking you because to explore alternatives if there are any.
Yes, I explore, but I do not have.
What you don't have?
Yes. Laptop and other things.
I'm asking about the scribe, sir. Can you arrange for a scribe, someone who can type the assignment on your behalf?
It will be.
So if you can explore that option, you do that. Otherwise, you have my number. You can call me and then we can speak on it about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Start my video. Mute my audio.
Do we have more questions? So I think for all those who are not present, CG, please take the lead and please inform everyone on the group that we have already we have uh, uh, taken all the concerns and issues regarding the assignments, and we have tried to resolve that. So no more concerns will be taken from now on. So the revised deadline is 27th April. We'll send an email for that. And those of you all have exams, share your date sheets and email it to us. I will find a way for you all to submit the assignments. And just a small message from my side that I want to give you all. We have covered 17 lectures so far, and even though I'm not speaking in most of the classes, I am there and I am just observing who all are attending the lectures and who are not, who are giving the periodic tests and who are not. So see, it's up to you if you want to take it up seriously or not. But attendance in lectures and periodic tests will matter when it comes to your final exams and your grades for that. So I mean, I'm open for any kind of support that you guys want, but please be serious about your assignments, the remaining lectures and the periodic tests. And assignments are something that, that will give you an actual idea of what kind of learning you have had from the certificate course. It will give you an idea of your research skills. And I am pretty sure that this assignment is going to be useful for you all in your future academic curriculum, and even now after your graduations or post graduation. So this is going to be something very useful. I'll just give you a small instance. Abhay has raised one interesting question today about including accessibility features when it comes to NAC gradings and NAC observance systems. So, this could be something very interesting, and this could be something that can be taken up at a national level. So it is totally up to you how interesting your topics are, how interesting your research is. And we assure you, whatever we find unique and whatever we find is something of the nature that can be taken up and that can be actually implemented on a national scale, we will support you and we will guide you how to do that. So please be serious about your assignments, about your final exams. I understand that you guys have your lectures and your regular classes and your exams and final exams going over, and I do understand that it becomes a headache at times. And for that reason, I will be supporting in whichever manner possible. But please, I mean, just give your best for these assignments and for the final exams. Rest, leave it up to me. We will take care of it. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, then thank you so much. No more concerns for the assignments will be taken up. Those who are present are witnesses that we have dealt with this lecture and we have with this thing, and we have given it 25 good minutes for it. So no more issues can be addressed. जिनको email करना है वो email कर दीजिए. The deadline is 27th April. We will send the emails. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Arun sir. Thank you, Preeti ji. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Thank you.